Talking about suicide prevention in the Army. Imagine if I wasn't here today. If Mr. Mathis told you at the beginning of the meeting Ms. Gomes had committed suicide. How would that make you feel? Would you replay the last couple of days in your mind? Would you replay the last couple of weeks? Thinking about anything, were there any symptoms you might have seen that might have caused you to ask me, hey, Ms. Gomes, are you okay? You thinking about hurting yourself? So today we're going to go over 4 main topics. And the topics will include data, Army data, based off components, Army statistics over who, the race, age, gender. We're also going to talk about signs and symptoms, and we're going to discuss resources available. There's a big stigma in the Army with suicide awareness. Soldiers who think, hey, I'm big, I'm strong, I don't need help. And I believe that's the main reason why a lot of our soldiers are committing suicide nowadays, because they don't want to reach out because of the stigma that's associated with suicide. So our first topic we're going to talk about is suicide affects all components of the Army. In 2001, the suicide rate in the Army was a lot lower than the civilian side. It was about 19 suicides per every 100,000 soldiers. In 2001, we had 52 suicides in the Army. Based on that, 90%, 47 soldiers were active component, 10% was Army National Guard and Reserves with 5 soldiers. Fast forward to 2004, when the increase happened due to the war, when we started going to war with Afghanistan and Iraq, our numbers increased from 52 to 67 suicides. The majority was still based on active component with 47 soldiers, and the National Guard Reserves was 13 soldiers. That was 2004. 2012, it was 325 reported suicides in the Army. 56% were active component with 182 soldiers, 30% was National Guard with 96 soldiers, and 14% was Reserve soldiers with 47 soldiers that committed suicide. All right, we reviewed the statistics as far as the component breakdown as who commits suicide. Active component is still in the lead with over 50% of suicides, followed up by National Guard and following them by the Army Reserves. So now that we've discussed the percentage and the breakdown, we're going to look at the statistic and the stressors that may cause suicide. Okay, I lost all my notes. Okay. That's all messed up. Can we get deep for that? All right, second main point. 75% of suicides are all committed in CONUS, 10% are committed in a combat operation theater, and 5% are committed elsewhere. High risk factors that pertain to suicide is your substance abuse, alcohol abuse, previous mental health issues, and that's for soldiers under the age of 50. Most common methods of suicide for males, they tend to do gunshot wounds or asphyxiation by hanging. Women are more likely to use prescribed drugs, a less lethal means of committing suicide. The highest risk factor, in case you haven't figured it out, is active duty, junior enlisted, white male, single, combat MOS, under the age of 24. A lot of people think that multiple deployments cause a high risk of suicide, and there is no correlation in that. In fact, the opposite is actually true, because soldiers who have been deployed more than once have built up the resiliency skills to deal with multiple deployments. They know what's expected. So now that we've reviewed the statistics as far as the age component, gender, what typical suicide high-risk data factors for the Army are, we're going to talk about symptoms, signs, and causes. Number one main cause is relationships and finances. Those who have relationship troubles and those who have financial troubles are usually the highest at risk for suicide. Following that is military work and physical health. Being in the military, a lot of us have been in this work for quite a number of times, so soldiers who are having adverse actions such as Article 15s, separation proceeding, med boards, those are your second highest at risk, because now that they have no drive in life, they have no reason in the military, they get separated, or they're going through some adverse action, they get reduced, or they get passed over on a board. That's a high risk factor for suicide as well. Substance abuse is incorporated with 5% of all reported suicides. Is always alcohol and drug abuse that's involved in 5% suicides. And the last one just talking or writing about suicide, if I come and I say, hey, Cat McClain, I'm thinking about killing myself, that's a red flag, that's a sign, that's a symptom. If I'm reliving tragedies, the death of a loved one, speaking about death, being withdrawal, if I come to work and I'm not talking to anybody for a couple of days, something's wrong with me. Being withdrawal from family, being withdrawal from friends, changes in their habits, sleeping more, sleeping less, all contribute, are all signs for possible suicide, high-risk suicide. Now that we've discussed signs, symptoms of suicide, we're going to go into multiple resources that are available to soldiers. The Army has incorporated every soldier with the ACE card. A, ask your buddy, is he okay? C, care for your buddy. And E, escort them. They also provide assist training, which is applied suicide intervention skill training. For gatekeepers, that training is meant for immediate suicide intervention. When you have a soldier that's ready to commit suicide and has spoken that they wanted to commit suicide. Another option you have are MRT, which is your Master Resiliency Trainers. Those are taught to teach soldiers how to build resiliency skills for living. You have your chaplain assistants. You also have your medical treatment facilities that are available. You have phone lines. You have the VA phone line, Army One Source. And finally, you have online resources, veteran websites, and Ask Your Battle Buddy, which is a Google app, which is available on your phone. In conclusion, we went over, discussed the suicide rates of the Army. We've discussed the statistics of the Army. We've discussed the data, signs, symptoms. We've also discussed resources that are available. And in closing of this presentation, I just want to say if we ever have to attend a soldier's funeral based off of suicide, then we fail them to provide them the means and the skills for assistance and to live a positive life without suicide. And that is my brief for today.